Hey everyone, thanks for stopping by the movie Hangout. Leaving Neverland. I finally got to watch it, both parts. This is by far one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. Um, Not necessarily because it's entertaining. The content is really, really difficult to sit through. It was not entertaining at all to listen to two grown men in their 30s talk about when they were molested by Michael Jackson. It was really, really difficult. But what sets this documentary apart from other documentaries about a celebrity or just a well-known person where there's like an allegation, there's an immense amount of evidence in this thing, and I'll get through it. So, all right, so it's 4 hours long in length. The entire thing is jam-packed with interviews by the two young men who were allegedly molested by Michael Jackson. The first guy, his name is Wade Robson. I've never heard of this guy, but if you were like somebody that was a fan of like the NSYNC or Britney Spears or a lot of that pop bubblegum stuff in the late '90s, early 2000s, he was like the go-to guy in the music business. He was the top dance choreographer. He taught Justin Timberlake how to do all of his moves. Same with Britney Spears. Allegedly, he had a relationship with Britney Spears, and he was the guy that broke up Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears. If you care about that stuff, he still is huge in the business. Super successful guy, and is just like, I mean, the guy can dance. What can you say? The other guy, his name is James Safechuck. I believe that's how you pronounce his last name. And James was a child actor. He originally met Michael Jackson in a Pepsi commercial and was unfortunately kind of seduced basically by Michael Jackson and abused throughout his adolescence. So with these two guys, the two, I guess what's interesting about this documentary is there'll be an interview with Wade or James, and you'll get to see them, and they'll describe how Michael Jackson treated them. Everything from the fact that Michael Jackson would actually come to their house and spend the night at their house. He would sneak in. He'd have somebody bring him in with a disguise so nobody would notice, and he would spend the night. Right now, that sounds unbelievable. I mean, Michael Jackson had the Neverland Ranch. The guy was worth $1 billion. He could do anything. Yet, for him to actually go to a young boy's house and spend the night seems unbelievable until you actually see pictures, real pictures of Michael Jackson chilling out in people's living rooms, in their homes late at night, eating dinner with them. And it just gets even weirder from there. So you have these young guys give really specific details about their relationship, and then the filmmaker, director Dan Reed, who did a fantastic job on this, he cuts immediately to corroborating evidence, such as photographs, photographs of Michael Jackson with the kids at his Neverland Ranch, also in their family home, on tour. Um, also, there were also voicemails that like the old cassette answering machine everybody had in the '90s. Well, Michael Jackson would leave like 4, 5, 10 voicemails a day, basically obsessed with these kids. And they would play some of these. And he would say things in the voicemails that were just really creepy and weird. It was like he would speak in the same tone you would speak to your girlfriend, like, hey, sweetie, how are you doing? You're the best ever, just like things like that you wouldn't say to a guy friend or just somebody that's like an adolescent. It's just weird. And he would have pet names for these kids. So that's another detail. I was like, that's too unbelievable. I don't know if I buy that one. But these guys would give like, they would say like, oh, Michael Jackson would call me little one, or he'd call me like this or that. And then they would show or let you listen to the actual voicemails where he would say that stuff. And it was just weird. It was like a pet name you would give a girl. It was just really bizarre. And then Michael Jackson, if that isn't even enough, he wanted to be faxing these kids back and forth because at the time there was no, not everybody had like a cell phone. You couldn't text message back then. So he got a fax machine. He actually bought himself a fax machine, Michael, And then he bought the family's fax machines so he could send faxes back and forth to the kids and also to like the siblings and also to the parents. And they, of course, they kept the actual fax hard copy because, this is like a famous person, the most famous person in the entire world, sending, you know, like daily devotionals to you, like how you're the greatest person ever and I miss you. And even like what I can understand, the parents didn't look at that as a pet name for their kid. They probably thought it was a joke or something because it's so weird. But I mean, basically, they were like love letters every single day to these kids. So they kept those, and you see his handwriting. It's written; it matches up with his handwriting on other documents. Um, the wording is just like how Michael talks, and Michael would even say the same phrases in the voicemails that are on the fax. I mean, it's crazy. It goes through basically how he seduced these kids. He not only seduced the kids, he seduced their families. Uh, you know, in pedophilia they call it grooming, and you really see that's like the main theme of this. It is about Michael Jackson and these kids, but what it shows is how an adult will groom somebody and their family to trust them, and then take advantage of them. And what was really interesting about the Michael Jackson debacle is that because he was such a huge star, and if you weren't like a big fan of his, and you don't really realize the magnitude of how famous he was. Michael was honestly like the Beatles and Elvis Presley mashed into one human being. And because there was no social media back then, a star seemed like literally as far away from you as a star in outer space. Like they were like unattainable, like shining brightly. And the fact that person would even look at you and acknowledge you like you even exist is enough to win you over. And so the fact he was such a megastar groomed everybody to love him anyway. From all of his like supposed charity events for kids, establishing the Neverland Ranch, um, always being about the children, and then also always acting like a kid. And that was the thing too that was really bizarre and creepy. The mothers of the two boys in this said that because Michael acted like a kid so convincingly, they forgot he was like 30 years old, 30, 35 years old. They were like, oh, they actually felt like he was one of their children. He was like the same age as their 7 year old or their 10 year old. But this dude is over 30 years old. I mean, I mean, the level of manipulation in this is incredible. And it's not the editing, it's not the director, it's not, you know, just Wade and James interviewing. You actually get to see and hear Michael Jackson do this stuff. And you don't want to believe it. There's still a part of me that doesn't want to believe this could possibly be true because if you really accept it, if you accept that he really did these things, then you have to accept that he created a world, the Neverland Ranch, his persona, using a higher voice. Uh, I mean, everything. The Super Bowl, what was it, the early '90s Super Bowl halftime show, where he has kids run on the field and he's surrounded by children. All of this stuff you have to then just kind of like imagine and accept that all was tied to this carnal need to abuse adolescent kids. And it's just like it, you got to see it. If you still want to support Michael Jackson, you got to see this thing. Even if you like him, you don't like him, whatever. From a filmmaking standpoint, from a documentary standpoint, just learning about a person that's such a huge part of our culture and pop culture, it's really important to watch this thing. And everybody's talking about this for a reason because it's so compelling. Radio stations all over the world are refusing to play any of Michael's songs. I believe the BBC just made a decree that if any radio disc jockey plays a Michael Jackson song, you're going to be fired on the spot. All of the Jackson family, they're freaking out because they're all on the gravy train. They'll get just free money and from the Jackson estate because they, every because they get residual income, so they have a monetary incentive to deny all this stuff or to bash these two guys. And the thing about it too is it's not just these two guys, and it goes through the trial in the early '90s and then also in 2005, and just how he seduced these kids, used them. He would always play the victim, and that was a thing too that's weird. Michael Jackson would always pretend to be the victim, even though he's worth $1 billion and he has all this fame and power over people. He would cry on the phone to the families. He would cry in person. He would just whine and complain that he's so lonely. Boohoo, poor me. And so what they felt like was they felt like they in some ways needed to save this guy from himself and from the life that he's living right now, and which is just a form of manipulation. And it gets into graphic detail as well. Like if you have kids, it's really tough to listen to this because these guys get into graphic detail about what sexual experiences they have with Michael Jackson in graphic detail. I did not watch this with anybody else because it just would be too uncomfortable sitting with a bunch of people watching this thing. It is extremely difficult to hear this stuff. And on top of it, what's so frustrating is that because Michael Jackson is dead, there's no closure. His family is always going to deny it happened because they have an incentive to. The people that say they were molested by him, they're always going to say he did this. And then there's all of us. And we're just like, what do I do here? I don't want to support a person that did these horrible things, but I don't like 100% know if he did. And I mean, until like a person says they did it, you can only be like 99.9% sure, And with this, you have to watch it, and you decide for yourself what you think about this. I think Dan Reed, the director, did a phenomenal job, and there's been so much backlash about this. Oprah Winfrey is getting boycotted because she had the two victims on her show give their story. Dan Reed has been attacked on the Piers Morgan show. He's been attacked on, he was on the CBS morning show. He got attacked for that. I mean, look, like, we don't want people falsely accused of things, but when there's all this evidence, and then plus, like, if you just think about it, if you had a neighbor who was, I don't know, work construction, or he was a teacher, or he was a football coach, or the librarian in town, and the guy was single, not married, and he always had kids staying at his house. He always had like one kid, a different kid all the time, just sleeping over at his house all the time. And he would have his arm around the kid and like and be kind of flirtatious with the kid. What would you think about that? I think we would all be like, this dude might be a pedophile, But for some weird, bizarre reason, we elevate people because they might be really entertaining. And I think that the whole Michael Jackson story is, I think it's a good reflection of our culture in many ways, how we elevate people and make ridiculous excuses for entertainers for their terrible behavior and their terrible conduct. We saw it with the Me Too team, Me Too movement. The Time's Up thing that kind of went and came, and I think we're seeing it with this, and for some reason people still look at celebrities like they're different or better than all of us, and they're really not. I've met a lot of people on set that are big stars, supposedly big stars, and they're nothing special. You watching this right now are more impressive than they are. The only difference is they're on television or in a movie and you're not. That's the only difference. But anyway, did you go see it? Are you going to watch it? Do you want to watch it? Let me know. And if you saw it, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on it. Do you think that, Michael Jackson's a pedophile? Or do you think that this is just basically two guys making up a story to get a bunch of fame and money? Let me know because I'm really interested. Everybody's talking about this right now all over the internet, and it seems pretty split. Seems like the diehard Michael Jackson fans just are gonna stick with him no matter what, and people that like his music but aren't like super in the Michael Jackson cult are like, dude, the guy could dance, the guy could sing, he could write music and perform, but he was also a really bad person. So comment below, let me know. And as always, if you want to get future rants, reviews, or original content, click subscribe. Later.